it's going to dig in, that it's going to be seen to stand up to Trump, and that it's not going to take this lying down. The latest sort of threat, if you like, from the United States came yesterday, very late, actually, Asia time. This threat essentially to add 50% tariffs on all Chinese goods on top of what already exists. I think it's worth taking a step back and just reflecting on how all of that would add up, because it has been a lot of different numbers backwards and forwards in recent days and recent weeks. That 50% would sit on top of 34% that was announced last week, on top of 20% that was announced earlier in Donald Trump's term, in top of some other additional tariffs that were left over from his first term. You add it all together, and it essentially would be tariffs in excess of 100% on every single Chinese good sold to America, some up to 120%. And it's really hard to overstate just how punitive that would be for China-US trade. At that sort of numbers, trade would be absolutely decimated between the two countries. It would be almost impossible. And to put that in context of China's economy, a fifth of China's economy is its exports, and America is its biggest export partner. So it will have a huge impact here in China, and that will spread out across this region and across the world too, because of course the world's two biggest economies in this level of trade war, it affects everything, trade flows, demand, so on and so forth. It will be very, very big indeed. And look, China absolutely this morning, in all of the statements put out in all of the newspapers, taking this stance that it will not back down. The Commerce Ministry released a strongly worded statement. It described this as a grave mistake, insult to injury, described it as blackmailing, and crucially saying that it will fight to the end. But what, of course, the question is now is what could or would China do next? Because, frankly, it is unlikely to have modelled for a scenario of 120% tariffs. And the options, frankly, don't look good from where China is standing. It could do things like target very high-profile US companies like Apple or Tesla, but that isn't a good option for it because it wants investment from foreign companies at the moment. It could devalue the currency a bit. Again, that has adverse effects, but I think it's worth pointing you towards an op-ed that was written by one of the editors of one of the biggest state newspapers here in China this morning. It pointed towards potential things it could do, such as completely ceasing any cooperation over fentanyl. That would be a very big deal as far as Donald Trump was concerned. Potentially even doing things such as banning the imports of American films. I mean, really, we are talking about very serious sort of cultural separations as well as just economic ones. So people will be watching the next 24 hours or so very carefully and very nervously, I think.